break up soon, and I will more.
And gentlemen, please step out into the hallway.
Dead.
Did you intend to?
Oh, yeah.
This is Luis Bracamontes' reaction to receiving death sentence. However, it didn't seem to affect him in any way.
Break up soon, and I will more.
October 24th, 2014, a day that would end in tragedy. Luis Bracamontes, without warning, attacked two officers in California, leaving them no chance to return home. It began in a Motel 6 parking lot in Sacramento, where Bracamontes opened fire at Sacramento County Sheriff's Deputy Danny Oliver, without any apparent provocation. But it didn't stop there. Luis Bracamontes and his wife attempted to carjack a vehicle to escape. In the process, Bracamontes opened fire on a civilian who refused to surrender his car keys. Bracamontes and his wife fled to Auburn, California, where they encountered Placer County Sheriff's Detective Michael Davis, Jr., and his partner. Bracamontes exchanged fire with the officers, resulting in the death of Detective Davis. Luis Bracamontes was eventually captured and convicted for his crimes. Luis Bracamontes also testified that he killed the two officers.
And gentlemen, please step out into the hallway.
Dead.
Listen to what he had to say to the judge caught in standing trial. You'd expect remorse, but not from Bracamontes.
Break up soon, and I will more.
Throughout his trial, he laughed and smirked, showing no regret. Luis Bracamontes was sentenced to death. When sentenced to death, Bracamontes' reaction was chilling. No fear, no sorrow, just laughter. Luis Bracamontes' wife Janelle Monroy is facing life imprisonment. She is also on trial and wept as the officers gave their testimony. As we leave behind the chilling tale of Luis Bracamontes, we transition to another story. A story that is filled with guilt. The case of Keith Ferguson, a man who was the reason that Tiffany Ferguson disappeared, the mother of his children, and her father, James Weber. Keith Ferguson, in an act that shocked everyone, pled guilty to what he had done. The victims, his wife, Tiffany Ferguson, and her father, James Weber.
And did you?
Oh, yeah.
And did you think about whether or not and make a deliberate choice to do so?
No way.
Alright.
Put a half a
In a shocking act, he fired at his wife while their 4 children witnessed the tragic event. In front of their 4 innocent children, Ferguson fired at Tiffany. As she lay dying, he didn't stop there. He took those children, witnesses to their grandfather's house, only to make him disappear as well. Miraculously, the children found the courage to escape to a neighbor's home. Meanwhile, Ferguson, now a fugitive, forced his way into a stranger's home, barricading himself inside until he finally surrendered to the police. What could drive a man to such darkness? Authorities believe the catalyst was Tiffany's recent filing for divorce, a decision that perhaps ignited a fuse in Ferguson, leading to these unspeakable acts. At his court hearing, Ferguson clearly showed he didn't respect the process. He kept acting out, even when the judge tried to involve him in what was happening.
Okay, well, I'm not getting into any detail of what happened.
If you want to be guilty, you have to say what you did.
I'm not saying.
When they talked about how much money Ferguson needed to pay to be temporarily released, the people against him wanted it to be a very high amount. The judge agreed.
The defendants are multiple people and fled and has taken hostages. There's no doubt in my mind that this particular defendant has a high risk non-appearance or danger to the public.
We have issues of flight, home invasion thing. I'm gonna set it as a $10 million fine.
It didn't seem that Keith Ferguson cared the high amount. He just wanted to go back to his cell.
Here, the podium, please. All right, I need to have you raise your right hand for me. Okay, all right.
Put me back in my cell.
Okay, stop.
Keith Ferguson then proceeded to confess what he did as the judge asked him if he intended her and her father.
And did you intend to?
Oh, yeah.
In order for the court to accept the plea, Ferguson had to describe the details of the crime by answering a series of questions. While addressing the court, Ferguson started screaming obscenities and lashing out at the judge and the media.
I'm not getting into any detail of what happened.
If you want to be guilty, you have to say what you did.
I'm not saying all right? Because of the respect and safety of my children, I'm not saying nothing, because they're gonna see this. They don't need to hear that. Understand what I'm saying? You know, let's just make this painless and not. Give me my 100 years or whatever, and give me the out of here.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Okay, well do it!
Keith Ferguson didn't want to give details of what happened out of respect and safety for his children. Keith Ferguson didn't want to stay. He was eager to go and pleaded with the judge for a verdict and the death penalty because he couldn't bear the guilt of his actions.
Tragedy of, just sent me, killed me. And about the children,
They've been through enough. And it would be good for me to, I don't want them to see me.
Before he was sentenced, Carla, a friend of Tiffany, stood to deliver a statement about the grief and disbelief of all affected. She highlighted Ferguson's proclaimed love for his children, a love that tragically manifested in the most heinous way possible.
I knew one day you would she would always reply, "He loves his kids too much. He won't." Well, we see how much you love them. You love them so much, you mother and grandfather. Why? You could have just taken your own life and saved these poor kids, their grandmother, friends, and community a horrific pain. Do you have any idea of the emotional pain your kids have suffered and will continue to suffer their entire lives? Your Honor, on behalf of the kids, myself, and all of Chip's friends and family, please send Keith to prison for life without any chance for parole. Thank you.
When it was Ferguson's turn to speak, the courtroom was enveloped in a tense silence. But no words of remorse came. Instead, there was an unsettling absence of emotion. The judge, before delivering his sentence, addressed Ferguson.
You may not meet the clinical definition of insanity, but there's clearly something fundamentally wrong with you. You're incapable of understanding that intentionally depriving an elderly woman of her husband, her mate for life, and 4 children of your mother, to satisfy your own selfish urges.
justice.
Is something that deserves the most important and serious punishment.
You'll never again have an opportunity to hurt any innocent people. You'll never again have the opportunity to be free.
Ferguson was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, a life to be spent in reflection of the irrevocable pain he caused. As he was escorted from the courtroom, he had to say a last thing before leaving.
Can't give me the death penalty? I'll see y'all in hell.
Transitioning from the tragedy of the Ferguson family, we encounter another case that compels us to question the very foundations of our approach to justice and rehabilitation. The next case is Scott Nelson, aged 55, faces trial for the disappearing of 56-year-old Jennifer Fulford, admitting to his crimes.
Who for Fulford?
I did.
Nelson broke into a residence armed. This initial act of breaking and entering set the stage for the subsequent crimes. Inside the house, he found Jennifer Fulford, whom he took after taking Fulford. Nelson attempted to use her bank details to withdraw cash from a local ATM. The series of crimes escalated to its most tragic point.
You bought zip ties?
Yes, I did.
You bought duct tape?
That'd be correct.
You bought
I sure did.
You, at that point, formed a plan to use those items. You knew that somebody was going to pay for how you've been treated.
That is very accurate.
Nelson confessed to planning a burglary, hoping to steal enough money to flee and avoid parole. Surveillance footage shows him buying burglary tools. When Nelson drove Fulford to a remote location and made her disappear completely. After making Fulford disappear, Nelson attempted to conceal it by abandoning her and the vehicle he used to transport. During the trial, Nelson testifies with honesty.
Bind her hands behind her back.
I would imagine so that she couldn't leave.
Why did you bind her feet with duct tape?
I imagine so she wouldn't walk away.
Nelson was released on parole 4 months earlier after more than 10 years in jail for armed robbery. Nelson claimed he was rebuilding his life until he lost his employment and shelter, leading him to despair. ATM surveillance and DNA evidence in the victim's car confirmed Nelson's guilt, leading to his conviction for making Jennifer Fulford disappear. Ultimately, Nelson receives a life sentence without parole for his crimes.
Mental health been affected by your previous incarceration?
I am a homicidal maniac.